Welcome, welcome. How is everyone tonight? Hope that everyone's doing well. We are here for another Lilith study. And I've been working on this series for quite a while now. And I think this might be the 8th video, maybe even the 9th video I've done on this. And so I'm hoping that, we could get some discussion going today. I'm going to remove the, I'll put this here so that you guys can talk. And I'm not sure about who this Gavar guy is, but let's, we'll hope for the best here. No, fine, Sean. You don't have to watch the others first. There's a lot of information in here that, probably some of it would be familiar to you. And we're just going to continue on through here. Last time we talked about the Shota, and we talked about the bitter waters ceremony. We talked about how the Talmud explains it. And so we'll see what else we have in here. So basically what I'm going to do is just read along and comment where needed. I will show the scriptures where needed. And I'm not sure if we're going to get to the golem tonight or not, Vicky. But we'll see what's ahead here. So basically I'll just go by little section at a time. We can discuss as we go, okay? Okay, all right. Farmer, New Mexico. I've been communicating with Jackson. Well, okay, well, welcome, Gavar. Welcome. All right, good deal. Good to have you here. A fellow who knows Jackson. So, all right. So we're gonna start this reading here. The mystical bitter waters trial. So this is where we left off. And remember, we were talking about the physical aspect of the bitter water, which is down in the book of Numbers, and it is administered by the priest. And it's in the case of a husband and wife, and a husband who suspects his wife has stepped out on him, committed adultery in some way. And now, according to the Talmud, this procedure it comes with some very, how do I say this? Very, very, almost in a way, it's almost freaky spiritual kind of things that are happening. When you think about if a woman is guilty, she instantly begins to have a breakdown of her thigh and her belly. There's it's like a curse on her. But if a woman is innocent after enduring this bitter water trial, she is given her womb is opened and she's given childbirth. So we talked about the physical aspects first, but now we're going to talk about the mystical. So now that the physical steps of the bitter water trial have been laid out, let's discuss mystical aspects of the trial that relate to Lilith and Eve. Full discussion of the trial's mystical nature is a vast topic. It is tackled in detail in BWC, the Bitter Waters Code. That's another book, which shows that there are profound supernatural events occurring underneath the surface of the trial's rituals. This is first hinted at in Numbers 5:27. Well, let's take a look at 5:27, Numbers 5:27 here. All right, let's see. All right, so here it is. And when he hath made her drink the water, then it shall come to pass that if she be defiled and have done trespass against her husband, that the water that causes the curse shall enter into her and become bitter. And her belly shall swell and her thighs shall rot. And the woman shall be a curse among her people. And, the Talmud says that this woman dies from this, presumably, a very fast-acting infection. Okay, so now that the physical steps of the bitter water trial have been laid out, let's discuss mystical aspects of the trial that relate to Lilith and Eve. Okay, so we got to that part. Trying to figure out how to get my, there we go, that's better. All right, so that was in Numbers, which says the innocent woman shall bear seed as a result of the trial. Okay, as laid out in the Bitter Water Code, confirmed by the Zohar, the following mystical elements transpired during the trial. When the woman drank the bitter waters, in which the dust was suspended, in which the name of Yahweh, and I'm not going to use that because I think that's an improper rendering. And the written curses that were blotted, a golem was supernaturally created and animated in her womb. Look at that. This golem was the seed of the trial. For the defiled woman, Yahweh sent fathering spirits to supernaturally animate her golem into a seed of abomination and adultery. From the innocent woman, Yahweh sent spirits to animate her golem into a seed in the image of Elohim. Now, these are rabbis supposing why this happens. And now, am I skeptical about that? I'm highly skeptical. I think in reality, there could be a supernatural curse put on the woman who was caught in adultery, but at the same time, I think that if the woman is innocent, then when her husband and her come back together, I think she gets pregnant. I think that's the reality of it. Yeah, it is, Vicky. When the priest took the woman's grain offering to the altar, their seeds were also taken as offering to Yahweh. These seeds bore away the curses which the woman first drank. The defiled woman's seed of adultery was a sacrifice rejected by Yahweh. He was returned with the curses to the woman when she drank the second time. Interesting. So they do weave this into a narrative, don't they? The innocent woman's seed was an accepted sacrifice to Yahweh. The seed was slain and arose in the smoke of a grain offering to Yahweh. There, the seed was miraculously revived. The waters were healed of their curses. The replacement seed was returned to the woman when she drank the second time. That almost sounds like the whole episode with Abraham and Isaac, doesn't it? In some ways. When the woman of the trial drank the second time. Now remember, this section of the book is about what the rabbis teach about the bitter water trial, found in Numbers chapter 5. So when the woman of the trial drank the second time, vastly different outcomes resulted. For the defiled woman, a rejected seed was returned to her in waters along with the cures, which it could not successfully bear away from her. Now, I wonder if he meant curse here. The curses took hold of her, beginning in her womb. I think that might be a misspelling. That is why the first effect was a swelling belly. Just as the golems of legends grow, her supernatural fetus grew and the curse spread. Next, her thigh fell away. This resulted from the false oath she uttered upon her seed. For in the Bible, a person will swear oath upon their progeny by swearing upon their thigh. Interesting. Finally, as the curses spread, the soda was consumed away. The innocent woman enjoyed a much better fate. When she drank the second time, there were no curses in the water. Her first seed successfully carried away the curses. With her second drinking, a second promised seed was given to her. This seed was the seed of innocence, but not the same revived seed in the image of Yahweh, which took away her curses. This second seed was the normal seed of man. It was a seed promised her in Numbers 5:27. Okay. So the above events may seem fantastic, but an exhaustive study done in the Bitter Waters Code teases out these mystical conclusions. As we shall see in chapter 5:3, the Zohar supports many of these mystical elements. Various modern scholars have also supported the notion that a golem is created in the course of the trial. You ever wonder where this golem concept comes from? Some of it is from this, I think. Dr. Abraham Elikam it looks like Elon University links the creation of golem to the soda trial. He notes the resemblance between the soda rite and the ritual of creating a golem. Both share common physical elements. The rite of soda uses the dust, holy water, and divine name. These same elements are used in creating a golem. Now, this gets into some some kind of like mystical kind of stuff, and it might even be it's not accepted as true by the author, but the author is putting this in here so that we can see what the Jews think about the bitter water trial and how this connects to spiritual realities. That's all. the author is not advocating for this line of thought. He's just saying this is what the Zohar says about it. Okay, Sean, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just curious, brother. Do you know, or even is it known by anybody, where this idea of this golem initially came from? Like, can we trace it back anywhere to like ancient sources where they may have adopted this or absorbed it?
Well,
I mean, the Zohar, yeah, but I mean beyond the Zohar, it's
yeah,
like the real ancient things. I'm wondering.
I don't see anything myself, or I'm not aware of it. So I don't think I could say anything beyond what I do know that the Zohar says in the text. Now, I don't accept the Zohar as authoritative, but I think that the author is putting this here just so that there can be some continuity between some of the other themes were presented. He's not necessarily saying this is correct, but he is presenting a narrative that will sort of build the framework for understanding where Lilith fits into all of this. Okay, let's see here. All share common physical elements. The rite of soda uses dust, holy water, divine name. These same elements are used in creating the golem. Furthermore, the procedure steps of the two rites are seen as identical by him. Professor M. Edels, this is Ben Zevi Institute, the study of Jewish communities. These holds that the rituals of the soda trial would have caused the woman to bear a son if proven innocent. This is because of the connection between the Bible's technique of trying a sota and the technique for making a golem. Dr. Elkiam explains that rabbis have long held the belief that a golem was created in the trial in the Middle Ages. Rabbis continue to believe they could create golems in part because they continued the soda rites. In some Jewish communities in that area, a woman was suspected of adultery, which, by the way, all of this was dealing with, this was outside the purview of Yahweh. How do we know that? Because the miracle stopped in 30 AD when Messiah was crucified. That year after all of these, and these miraculous part of this stuff, it stopped. And we read that earlier, remember in that last video? But some of these Jews went headlong ahead and decided to try to do this soda trial, even without a temple, without a priest, without anything. They tried to do it with rabbis who were not the same as a priest. And so this is where we might get some of the occult stuff with the rabbis, because they missed the boat on Yeshua, and they didn't realize that all of that mystical stuff had stopped. Okay, was brought to the synagogue to undergo a ritual. This is a woman caught in adultery. Rabbi would fill the role of the priest. He would draw holy water from the spring, gather dust from the four corners of the holy ark of the synagogue, throw it in the water. He would then write down the names of Elohim and rinse the writing off in the water. He would then give the water to the suspected woman to drink. The expected outcome was either death for the woman or, more hopefully, the son promised to her by numbers. If they're writing that in the Zohar, how is it that they can write that when it's was already recorded by Flavius Josephus? These miracles had stopped. So I think that this is very fanciful here. It was evident to the rabbis that the rites supernaturally caused the pregnancy of the innocent woman. They then linked the steps of the ritual to a formula for creating a man outside of the trial. The result was a golem. So you ever wonder where the golem concept comes from? It comes from the soda trial, which is the bitter waters trial. That's in the book of Numbers. Vicky, go ahead.
I have a quick question. Did you say a minute ago that this concept of the golem came about in the Middle Ages from the rabbis?
Yeah, earlier they said that they began to try to do this bitter water trial in the Middle Ages again. Yeah, but
but the concept of the golem was before that.
Yeah, well, the Zohar, the concept may have been before that, because the idea that they got this from was the bitter water trial, and that was done variously all throughout history of Israel when there was a standing temple and a priesthood.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It was evident to the rabbis that the rites supernaturally caused the pregnancy of the innocent woman. They then linked the steps of the rite to a formula for creating a man outside the trial. Okay, so that's the golem. The link between golems and bitter water trial is also demonstrated in the legendary characteristics of the golem. The rabbis infused the unusual elements of the bitter water trial into their tales of golems in order to reflect the nature of the soda rituals from which they learned to make these beasts. First, golems were typically animated by the holy name of Yahweh placed in their mouth. The seat of the bitter water trial was animated by the blotted name of Yahweh in the waters. Second, recall that golems constantly grew in size and power over time. This is in mimicry of the growing fetus of the soda, which caused her belly to swell. Also recall that a golem tended to go out of control over time and slay its maker. In fact, I think I remember seeing on one of these movie channels, they had a horror movie about a golem. What's the idea?
Oh, they've had several of those. Yeah, this is crazy. You know, if this is, I wrote on chat, if this is true, this is an abomination of just beyond.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, remember,
that's a horrible thing.
Yeah, you're right. It is, and we don't accept this as true. But I think what the author's doing here is connecting this to he's trying to connect in some way to Lilith, and I think he's going to try to get to it here, but he's just giving us some background on what the Zohar says, so that we can see the sequence of events, or at least the theory behind it. It was also with the defiled soda who yielded an iniquitous golem seed that brought a rampage of death to her. Finally, recall that rabbinic tradition held that a golem could be destroyed by erasing the first letter of the word truth written upon its forehead. If the leading aleph of emet, which means truth, was erased, the word becomes met, which means death. I think it's mot. The use of emet as a word of power for the golem was obviously parallels to the soda. The purpose of the soda trial was to search out the truth the woman's claimed innocent. If her seed did not bear the emet, truth of her innocence, when it brought the curse of met, death to herself. Okay, so that's where it's connecting in. This is the rabbis trying to explain the mystical, miraculous event that obviously must have occurred because it's in the book of Numbers. And they're going through all these different kinds of thought process and bringing up the golem concept in the Zohar. But I don't accept any of that. I really think it was the power of Elohim. It was the curse that was on this woman, as literally it does say in Numbers chapter 5 that her belly swells and her thigh rots. Literally does say this woman has a curse. I mean, there is a supernatural. How that goes about, I'm not sure. Let me see if I can hold on for a minute here. All right, so basically, of course, the woman who went through the bitter water trial and was innocent, she would get a child. But as to how that child came about, I think it was supernatural, and it was just a natural joining with her and her husband, because her husband would have been relieved. Also, he might have felt a little indebted to her, putting her through all of that, you know. There's that thought of it too. Okay, Brother Hosapple, go ahead.
Yes, I was just wanting to add to that, going right into the trials there, that a lot of people think Cain was the first golem, but if you're going into Lilith and you believe that, then Lilith would be the actual first ever golem, which is considered, from my knowledge and studies, is she's the first one to actually go away from Yahweh or disobey, to leave the garden, if you will. And within that, she changed, just like Adam and Eve. They lost exactly what happened. We don't have, we have a few studies, a few things to dig into, but obviously she changed when she left. So she would have been the first golem would have been Lilith, and she was changed because of her disobedience, because she left the garden. And then according to many other, like what you come up with of who she went with, and then the seed of, even Yeshua says you're from the devil, or you're from the seed of So that's what kind of ties in all of Lilith. But for my study, she would be the first ever golem, which is basically just translated into the Gentile, which is away from Yahweh or a non-believer, a non-follower, doing your own thing type thing.
Right, in the understanding that Lilith was, in other words, in other words, if you're taking the theory that Lilith in reality was this figure in the garden, and that she was created on the same creative level as Adam, and she
Right.
rebelled against Adam,
Right.
and so
And then
right. Now, the whole story, if you, you've heard of Azazel, when the high priest would lay his hands upon the scapegoat during the Yom Kippur ceremony and transfer the sins of the people onto that goat. He would say, Le Azazel. He would say, for Azazel. Now, Azazel, according to, well, this is in the book of Enoch. Azazel was the progeny of, in this understanding, of Lilith and Samael. Samael was one of the 200 watchers that came down to Mount Hermon, as spoken of in the book of Enoch, and they made a pact among themselves that they were going to have relations with human women and produce their own children. And so they ended up producing the race of giants, which turned out to be very grotesque, very violent, without any kind of moral grounding. They were just complete maniacs. Think of like the worst people in history. You could say without any remorse or anything, and you could magnify that by about 1,000. You'd get one of these creatures, And if that's also one of the reasons why the flood came, because they were so violent, they were destroying humanity from off the face of the earth, and it got down so bad that it was Noah and 8 souls saved alive on the ark, and no flesh would have been saved if the Father had not done that. Now, I had never understood that angle of why the flood had to come, but it makes sense because the Father was basically saving what little was left of the pure line of Adam. Because this genetic aberration had spread to such a degree. Let's see here. So let's see here. Let's go on 324, the bitter water trial of Lilith and Eve. So we're going to compare now to this bitter water trial and what happened to Eve, okay? So I've compiled a list of 8 evidences levied against the serpent and Eve, constituted a bitter water trial. By knowing that the trial was used for their curses, we may surmise the serpent was a wayward, adulterous wife of Adam. And that's the story of Lilith. In a sense, she did leave Adam and she shacked up with Samael. This could only be Lilith. So number 1, the serpent, like the soda, eats dust. The serpent, like the soda, is cursed in her belly. Number 3, the serpent, like the soda, loses functionality of her legs. You ever wondered why it says there's that curse in Genesis to the serpent? Lilith, in this understanding, is the serpent that's tempting Eve, trying to get her to break God's law. Why would she do that if not only for absolute spite and jealousy? Because Yahweh created Eve for Adam, if it's true that Lilith was his first failed wife. See what I'm saying? You can see that there. And notice it says, and the curse is given to the serpent, or in this understanding, Lilith, and it says, you shall eat dust all your days. You'll lose the function of your legs. So the soda's thighs rot and fall away, making her legs useless. The serpent is cursed to go upon its belly, implying a non-functionality of her legs. It could be, but it could also be idiomatically, it could be that she loses her, that she falls from grace. It could be like spiritual legs. She falls from grace, see? And at that point, Adam was still in the garden. He had not fallen. He still had communion with Yahweh. But when it says lose ability of the legs, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of directions you could go with this. So now I think that I think it was Michelangelo that did a chapel, and he showed Adam and Eve on this painting. Showed Adam and Eve, and he showed the tree of good, of the knowledge of good and evil, and he showed this serpent with a woman at the end of a serpent. It was like a serpent woman wrapping around, tempting, and handing this fruit to Eve. You ever seen that? I think I might have posted that somewhere. So that's interesting. So we've got 8 of these here that he's listing. The serpent seed, like the soda, is animated by fallen spirits. We shall see in chapter 6, the serpent's infamous seed is Azazel, who is likely sired by fallen angels called watchers. Number 5, just as the trials adulterous seed of iniquity slays temporarily the innocent woman's promised seed, so too does the iniquitous seed of the serpent bruise the heel of Eve's promised seed. So basically, that goes to that curse, and that's that thing in Genesis where it talks about this conflict between the generations of heaven and the generations of earth. Generations of earth would be the children of Adam and Eve. So we would be part of the generations of the earth because we have flesh. We're Adamah. We're of Adamah, which means the earth. We're of the earth. See what I'm saying? And so number 6, like the promised seed of the soda trial, the promised seed of Eve shall be revived from his bruising and shall crush the head of the serpent and slay her iniquitous seed. Number 7, Eve, like the innocent woman of the trial, is cursed to bring forth children in pain and sorrow. Remember, that was part of the curse given to Eve. The innocent woman of the trial must undergo the same rigors and pain as the defiled soda, at least until her grain offering is taken to the altar. So it looks like maybe there's a moment of pain even for the innocent woman. Number 8, well, of course, it doesn't say that in Numbers, though, does it? So that could just be Judaism making that up, supposing that. Eve, like the innocent woman of the trial, is saved by the process of childbearing through the curses of the trial. Look at that. Eve's salvation is certainly true in the sense that her seed is Messiah, who is triumphing over the serpent's seed. The biblical doctrine that Eve was saved through childbirth is made quite clear by 1 Timothy 2, 14 through 15. Have you ever read that? 1 Timothy 2, 14 through 15. Basically says that woman, she shall be saved by childbirth, by childbearing. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. Notwithstanding, she shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. So this here, if we understand Lilith, this makes a lot more sense. In other words, this understanding, it makes a lot more sense. It brings it together. There are 2 important points to be taken away from the bitter water trial in relation to Lilith's legend. First, Lilith was the archetype of the soda, and refusing to submit to Adam, she was the first wayward, adulterous wife who went astray under her husband. Now, think about this. Think about this. You know that Lilith, the symbol of Lilith, is used in witchcraft. In Wicca, it's used in the very far left, liberal, liberation, pro-abortion wing, the political wing of our society. They use her as a sort of a type for being able to rebel against authority and so on. And a lot of those women, there's only a certain number probably that are really true believers, and the rest of them are just convinced. They're convinced by the propaganda that a baby's not a real life, that it's just a piece of flesh, and it's gonna mess you up in this world, and therefore modern science has provided us a safe way to get rid of that fetus. They call it a fetus, right? Now think about this. The influence of other women on women to form their opinion. Think about that. Now think about if Lilith theory is true and the serpent was Lilith, think about the influence that she may have had on Eve at the place where the tree of the knowledge of good was, and that conversation. You see what I'm getting at here? It presents quite an interesting thing here. So I'll continue on. It says, second, because of her archetype status, many of the surmised rabbinical aspects of Lilith's legends were drawn forth from elements of Bitterwater Trial. In other words, basically, he's saying that they're just surmising. You know, a lot of it, I think, is fanciful in the Talmud or even in the Zohar. For example, the act of unleashing and disheveling the Soda's hair may have been the basis for Lilith doing the same. Unleashing the Soda's hair was said to unleash the spirit of Lilith within her. It was also believed that the animating idolatrous spirit within the Soda was empowered by the blotted name of Yahweh, which she consumed. Likewise, Lilith was empowered to sprout wings and flee by uttering the ineffable name of Yahweh. Now, that's in the that is in some of the Jewish texts where they go into more detail about this. Finally, Lilith's desire to slay children can also be linked to the trial. According to her legend, Lilith's deadly desire stemmed from her anger at having 100 of her own children slain by Yahweh's curse every day. So that was the punishment for her doing what she did to Eve. That was part of the punishment. Remember, what is this we're talking about here? This punishment here. Let's take this. I'm going to take you to Genesis so I can show you what this is talking about. Okay, here it is right here. Genesis 3:15. Okay, get this. All right, this. And Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me and I did eat. Now, if this serpent is Lilith, this does put some elements together. It kind of makes sense in some way. And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman. In other words, Lilith and the woman are going to have enmity, and between your seed and her seed. Now remember, this understand Lilith's seed is the generations of the heavens. And these would be today they would be demons. They would be demons. Back then, they may have had bodies. They may have been Nephilim, and it says, it shall bruise thy head. Let's see, between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So he's speaking to the serpent. You shall bruise his heel. So now, ultimately, how was the heel bruising accomplished? In the crucifixion of Yeshua. Remember, he was also called something Adam. He was called the last Adam. He was called Son of Man. Man as in the man as man was meant to be. Talking about completed Adam as man. Completed Adam before the fall as man. You shall bruise his heel. But guess what? I think this bruise here should be crushed. It shall crush thy head. Crush thy head. And I don't like this translation here. I think King James renders that correctly. Crush thy head. Yeah, you're right there, Sean. It's a very horrible, thing. Really is. So let's see here. Get this. I'm having trouble getting this moved around here a little bit. How about that there? That might be better. All right, so that's what we're talking about here. Lilith's deadly desire stemmed from her anger at having 100 of her own children slain by Yahweh's curse every day. And I think that, I can't remember exactly the text that suggests that, but I'm not sure if it's, We'll go along and see if we can figure out where they're getting that from. Likewise, the adulterous animating spirit of the soda trial suffered the death of its seed in every trial. Hence, the suffering of this animating spirit may have been the basis of Lilith's legends, stating that 100 of her own seed died every day. Much more now. I wonder if this has to do with all of the violence upon the earth before the flood, because they were mindlessly violent, these Nephilim creatures, these giants. They were doesn't Jubilees or one of the books, apocryphal books, talk about how they were so violent? The big ones were eating the middle ones, and the middle ones were eating the little ones. Essentially, that kind of stuff. And they were eating mankind. They were killing mankind. Maybe that's what it's talking about. That the 100 of their own seed died every day. Much more could be said on the Bitterwater trial in relation to the Lilith legend. However, such a discussion is out of the scope of this book. See Bitterwater Code for more on this subject. Okay, so the next part is Lilith in Isaiah 34. I think I posted that. Be interesting to see what he has. Any comments so far?
I'm kind of blown away here. I'm chatting with Vicky on the side here, and I definitely need to go back and watch those other videos. Brother, do you do all those, the other ones that you've done, like is session 1 all the way through till now done by you, or is it from other people?
I've done, this is my 9th video on it. So there's 8 hours plus this one so far.
All right, well, that will be my day tomorrow.
Yeah, it covers a lot of material. Now just imagine no pastor is going to touch this with a 10-foot pole in a church. They're not going to explain these. I mean, this is a theory that fits parts together that people would just say, I don't know. I don't know why does the high priest pronounce the sins of Israel upon the scapegoat and say Azazel? Why do they use that name, Azazel? And so on and so forth. Go ahead, Brother Holsapple.
Yes, to me, I mean, it fills in the gaps of, what if, where was the other people? Where did the people come from for Cain? Where did, all those things that people are afraid to ask or don't get told, that it fills in clearly. If Lilith was having children, then that's perfectly lines up. Where did Cain have his, where did he go off to? Where did them people come from? And plus, I mean, talking about crushing of the head, that's how the ancients did abortions, and that's how they did, they was ruthless with those things. And even pagans was even, worse, if you could put it that way. And what they're doing today, even in their parades and their thing, of what they're claiming today is what I would see Lilith did to Eve from the garden. Oh, but look at how more beautiful I am. Look, if I do, the same thing they're trying to say today. Oh, well, if you do this and you do this, you're so much more beautiful. You're more, more human than human, or however they try to paint their picture. But I see that going on today, of how they get people into, the LGBT and all these things, that they dress themselves up and make themselves different than the way they was created. And obviously that people are attracted to that for some reason. So I to me, it just is a more clear picture of the beginning to how it all came about, and exactly, why was everybody destroyed? Because they had to be, because the bloodline was clearly tainted horrifically. And if it wasn't for, Yahweh saving Noah and his family, we would have never had a chance. There would have been no blood. So I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Right. Yeah, good thoughts. Now, this next section here is about Isaiah 34. And I posted this. I think I showed you guys this in Hebrew. It's the one place where Lilith is mentioned by name. But interestingly enough, it has, there's a critical role that Lilith plays in Yahweh's final judgment of the nations in the end times. So let's read through this. So this is 321, Lilith and Isaiah 34. The most overt evidence for Lilith in the Bible comes in Isaiah chapter 34. That chapter contains the Bible's only direct mention of Lilith by name, Isaiah portrays Lilith as playing a critical role in Yahweh's final judgment of the nations in the end times. Her role is consistent with that prophesied by Yahweh for the serpent of the garden. At the crux of the final judgment of man, Isaiah sees Lilith engaged in a rivalry with a woman named Isha. Her first name was Eve. For Isaiah, Lilith is emblematic of all the wicked, and Yahweh eternally damns her to a land of withering drought, cursing, and fire. There, all her seed perishes from her cursing. Isaiah contrasts Lilith's fate to Isha's. For Isaiah, contrast Lilith's fate to Isha. Isha is blessed, remember, because it says in the New Testament, if she have children, then she shall be redeemed through childbearing, in that idea. For Isaiah, Isha is emblematic of Israel and all the righteous who shall be redeemed. Although Isha initially suffers alongside Lilith in the same curses, Yahweh redeems her from this situation. He delivers Isha and her seed into the Messianic kingdom. So, and whether that's talking about the Atid Lavo or whether that's talking about the resurrection, could perhaps both, because really even in the resurrection, if you look at Zephaniah, I'm trying to remember the chapter, but talks about Yahweh coming in the clouds, and he comes down, sets foot on the Mount of Olives, and it cleaves in two, and out of it comes fresh water that runs down, and it purifies the waters of the earth. And there's all different kinds of prophecies in Isaiah that relate to that. And then he inaugurates the Messianic reign. He inaugurates his 1,000-year reign on the earth. Okay, so Isaiah used the symbolism of the Yom Kippur ceremony and his contrast between the two women. This is not unexpected, as Yom Kippur foreshadows the great day of judgment, when the entire world should be judged. In Isaiah, the serpent Lilith and her seed represent the damned of that great day. These are the ones that are lost out. That would be the demons and those humans that allowed themselves to be beguiled by Lilith's seed. Isha, Eve, and her seed represents those who receive salvation. Isaiah not only links the name Lilith to the serpent in rivalry to Eve, he also corroborates many other mundane details of her legend. He confirms the notion that Lilith dwells in the midst of the sea, that she is a deadly bird-like creature, that she is the slayer of stray younglings, and that she is closely associated with a snake, and that she is the mother of failed seed that perishes from a cursing of Elohim. Okay, so let's look at 321:1, context of Isaiah 34. In order to fully understand Lilith's role in Isaiah 34, a little background on the chapter is needed. Chapters 34 and 35 of Isaiah discuss Yahweh's final judgment of the nations in the end times. Chapter 34 covers the cursing of the nations in that day, whereas chapter 35 covers blessings of Israel and initiation of the Messianic era. These two chapters are somewhat strange intrusions to Isaiah's ongoing account of Sennacherib's doomed siege of Jerusalem. In chapter 28 to 23, the prophet predicts of the demise for the Assyrian siege. In other words, I think I did a sermon on that episode there. In chapter 36 to 39, he then provides the historical narrative that document the siege's failure. However, between those passages lies chapter 34 and 35 and their discussion. Hold on for a minute here. What does that say at the end? Their discussion of the end times. Many critics hold the interruption of Sennacherib's account by chapters 34 and 35 indicate that the text was corrupted by later editors. However, supporters of the integrity of Isaiah's text hold that the chapters are clever inclusions by the prophet. They hold that Isaiah placed the chapters concerning the end times before Sennacherib's defeat, so that Israel could take heart that the distant future events of the end times would surely come to pass, just as the events of Sennacherib did in their day. Interesting. Now, maybe it would behoove us to read chapter 34 and 35. Let's take a look at that. So this is Isaiah chapter 34 and 35. Okay. Okay, so here it is here. It says, come near, you nations, to hear and hearken, you people, let the earth hear and all that is therein, the world and all the things that come forth of it. For the indignation of Yahweh is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses. And the mountains shall be melted with their blood, and all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll. Wow, doesn't that sound like Thessalonians? The heavens will roll back like a scroll, or is that in Revelation? That might be in Revelation. And all their hosts shall fall down. That could be where Satan is kicked out of heaven, maybe. And the leaf falleth off the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, upon the people of my curse to judgment. The sword of Yahweh is filled with blood, is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and with goats, with the fat of kidneys of rams. For Yahweh hath a sacrifice in Bozrah, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. Look at this, and the unicorn shall come down with them. Scholars have often puzzled about that unicorn word. I don't know, maybe there's another book that explains that a little better. The unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of Yahweh's vengeance, the year of recompense for the controversy of Zion. Now notice this, the controversy of Zion is happening now. It's happening now. How do we know that? Well, look at all of the anti-Israel sentiment. They think that, these people that are against Israel, they think that, let's see if I can get this. Okay. Basically, that Israel should not have been established, and that it was really not something that heaven ordained. It was done by men, and now they're going to try to destroy it. And you notice how Israel in Zion and Jerusalem is a centerpiece of an end time understanding of Scripture of what's going to happen in the end. If we say that there is going to be a tribulation, and the Antichrist is going to fool the Jews and set himself up as if he is Elohim, it says that in Revelation. Now this assumes a futurist understanding, or even if you do have an understanding that some of it came to pass in 70 AD. If you think that things are cyclical, then we see a fuller fulfillment in a future time. So this controversy of Zion. The streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become burning pitch. That sounds like nuclear devastation, doesn't it? Shall not be quenched night nor day, the smoke thereof shall go up forever. That's Revelation right there. It says the smoke of their charred bodies will go up forever and ever, right? From generation to generation it shall lie waste, none shall pass through it forever and ever. But the cormorant and the bittern shall possess it, the owl also, and the raven shall dwell in it. Now this is where, let's see, one of these here. And he shall stretch upon it line of confusion, the stones of emptiness, they shall call the nobles thereof to the kingdom, but none shall be there, and all their princes shall be nothing. The thorn shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the forests thereof, and it shall be an habitation of dragons and court of owls. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl, now that's where Lilith is in the Hebrew, screech owl. And also in the Lilith mythology, has anybody ever seen that horror movie it's kind of a modern one they did on Lilith? It's a horror movie. I was amazed at how accurate they were with, where did these writers get this stuff? Well, they got it from the Zohar, they got it from the Talmud, they got it from but the fact that she would have this horrific screech, and that was part of what they put into the movie. So I'll rest there. Now that in Hebrew literally says Lilith, by the way. I think I mentioned that. There shall the great owl make her nest, lay, hatch, and gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. Now look at all these different beasts here. They're almost magical. I mean, a satyr. You know what I think this is? What's that book? The Book of Enoch talks about satyrs. He talks about these great civilizations, this Nephilim, these Nephilim civilizations, and they were doing genetic testing. They were doing, the implication is they were doing genetic stuff, like what they're trying to do today, mixing two different kinds of animals. And I think in one of those books, it actually gives you all of these different creatures, like Taurus, like a satyr, and all of that. Who remembers where that's in? That's in one of those books. Yeah. Okay, so now here is something here. Seek ye out of the book of Yahweh and read. No one of these shall fail. So the people who seek out the book of Yahweh and they read it and follow it, no one of these shall fail. In other words, could be the prophecies or promises. None shall want her mate. For my mouth it hath commanded, and his spirit it hath gathered them. So this would be the good people, right? And he hath cast the lot for them, and his hand hath divided it unto them by line. They shall possess it forever. From generation to generation shall they dwell therein. Okay, so that's all a very apocalyptic chapter there in a lot of ways. Seek ye out the book of Yahweh. That's a good question. You know what? I just assume that to be the scriptures, but I wonder if it is a separate book. Maybe it is a separate book, Vicky. Maybe it is. Okay, so that is, let's see, how do we get to? So here, Isaiah 35 is a short one. The wilderness and solitary places shall be glad for them. The desert shall rejoice. The blossom is a rose. This almost sounds like the Atid Lavo, doesn't it? It shall blossom abundantly. That would be the millennial reign of Messiah. And rejoice even with joy, singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it. The excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of Yahweh and the excellency of our Elohim. Maybe that's a reference to Yeshua, ruling and reigning in Jerusalem. Strengthen ye the weak hands and confirm the feeble knees. Does that sound like what James said to us? Strengthen our weak hands and confirm and strengthen our weak knees and make straight paths for ourselves. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your Elohim will come with vengeance, even Elohim with a recompense. He will come and save you. Doesn't that sound like Yeshua descending on Mount Olives? In Zephaniah, then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. And also all other diseases will flee away in the Atid Lavo, because it says in Ezekiel and it says in Revelation as well, that when this pure water comes from deep, deep in the earth and it flows out and it heals the water of the earth, it says that the trees will begin to grow and they will yield fruit, 12 different types of fruit. And the fruit will be food for the people, and the leaves will be what? Who remembers? Medicine for diseases. Medicine for the diseases. They'll have healing for the medicine. Then shall the lame man leap as a hart, and the tongue of the dumb shall sing, for in the wilderness shall waters break out and streams in the desert. And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water. In the habitation of dragons, where each lay, shall grass with reeds and rushes. And a highway shall be there, and a way, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but shall be for those, the wayfaring men. No fools shall not err therein. No lion shall be there, nor any ravenous beast shall go up upon it thereon. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. Now, I wonder if that has to do with the second Exodus, the return to, maybe the second Exodus is going to happen at the return of Yeshua. That could be. And the ransomed of Yahweh shall return and come to Zion with songs and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness. Sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Go ahead, Vicky.
I couldn't understand what you were, the word you said twice, something Laveau?
Yeah, the Athid
What is it?
Lebo. Basically, that's the millennial reign of Messiah.
Is
Uh,
that the Hebrew for that?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
the Athid Lebo. Yeah, it's basically the time of peace and prosperity on the earth, and the devil has been defeated. All of his angels have been defeated, and now Yeshua is ruling and reigning on earth, and there is peace, and also the lifespan of those living people that make it into the Athid Lebo, it goes up exponentially, big time, because sin will have been defeated. And so that's where we get, like in Isaiah and some of these other prophecies, it talks about a child shall be 100 years old. Think about that. A child is 100 years old. Okay. And it talks about how a person will run and they will not grow weary. Well, of course, this is getting into a bunch of other topics, but it's been postulated that it could be that the atmosphere, it could be that the what do you call, the canopy may be replaced over the earth, just like it was before the flood. And it could be that let me just give you one little tidbit here. Now, you won't hear this in university if you're in any science classes, but they don't like to cover these inconvenient kind of things. But you know that the bones of brontosauruses have been found. They were massive, massive creatures. And probably, and now in my thinking, they were before the flood. They were before the flood because everything was bigger before the flood. Everything was. And there's a reason for that. Air pressure was, that's been postulated, maybe air pressure was twice as much, and there might have been maybe 30% more oxygen in the air. Because those are the conditions that are required to have such longevity. Now, because, see, right now we have all of these rays coming from the sun. The canopy is no longer over the earth. We have these rays coming down, and they are, well, it's like a water. It was like a water barrier. These rays are coming down and causing cellular decay at a much faster rate. Now, I'm kind of getting into some of the scientific stuff of this, but the idea is that when Yeshua comes back, he will restore all of this back, and lifespans will increase. Now, the Brontosaurus, it's been proven there is no way the Brontosaurus, given the diameter of its nose for its air capacity, there's no way that it could have been able to get enough oxygen to support that large of an animal. Okay, so that's one of the great mysteries of science. How is the nose diameter so small in order to feed that kind of level of oxygen needed to keep an animal that size? See, but if you understand that there's 30% more oxygen and you've got twice the air pressure, then you can understand how creatures are much larger. And you can understand how they could live because there's a lot more oxygen saturation in there. You ever wondered, like in medical, if you have a serious gash, they put you in a hyperbaric chamber. You know what they do is they increase the air pressure and they flood it with oxygen, and it causes your wound to heal a lot faster. Your cellular decay rate goes down big time. And, millionaires use this to try to stay young and try to stay, anyway, that's a whole other, I don't know why I got into all that. All right, so we are at 9 o'clock. Did we, let's see here. Where did we leave off at? Let's see. Okay, yeah, 34 and 35. I think we left off here, right?
That's right.
Okay. Discuss the eventual destruction of all of Israel's enemies, the end times, subsequent ushering under the Messianic age, which is an unprecedented time of peace and prosperity upon the earth. By placing the two accounts in juxtaposition, Isaiah was reassuring Israel that they could trust his end time promises would come true, just as previous promises concerning Sennacherib did. Okay, remember that. Sennacherib was the guy that came against Jerusalem during the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and Uzziah humbled himself before Yahweh, and there was great deliverance. I did a sermon on that episode, as I mentioned before. All right, I think that's good for today. I'll put this bookmark here. I think we covered a lot of material. Any other comments or anything? Now, some of this information is coming from Dr. Kent Hoving. If you get a chance, look up him on YouTube, Dr. Dino, Dr. Kent Hoving. He's the one that talks about the Brontosaurus. I never knew that. But he talks about how it was that such enormous creatures. And you know what? It's very likely that Adam may have been much larger than us.
I'm very familiar with him, with Dr. Holman. I first found out about him and Ken Ham used to have debates back and forth because one is a young Earth and one is a old Earth. But that's where I first heard about him. He has a lot of really good stuff. I tell you what, Dr. Hovind does.
Yeah.
He had a bit of a bump in the road, but he's come out, he's still lectures now, and you can talk, you can get him for, you might, if you reached out to him, you might get him for here, actually.
Yeah,
You might.
He really changed my because I was being completely bamboozled by university classes and the German higher criticism and the what do you call the evolutionary thinking. It was my brother Nathan that found out about this guy, started watching him, and it really changed his understanding, such that it would more match what the Bible was saying. And it did the same for me as well. But Dr. Ken Hoving talks about, he just presents some incredible stuff that, the idea that there could have been far more oxygen in the air, double the air pressure, and those kind of conditions can produce creatures the size of what we find in bones today, or what scientists find. And it also gives new dimension to the idea of giants, doesn't it? Yeah, the idea of giants.
I have a question about that in a minute, whenever.
Yeah, go ahead, Vicki.
Well, speaking of giants, and maybe Brother Greg can speak to this if he's still here. Do you remember? It's been many years ago now, where there was some talk. And I guess you can probably still find stuff about it, about the, what was the name of that giant? The giant of Kandahar.
Yeah, that's right.
Kandahar giant, yeah.
The red-headed, six-fingered, and there were, witnesses and stuff, obviously the soldiers and whatnot. I just wondered if, and it's kind of, at least for me, it was sort of hard to find anything out too much about that. So I was wondering if, you soldier guys might know anything about that.
Well, I mean, there's other than the tale that was related. Yeah, you can look it up. There's articles on that. Here's kind of what he might have looked like right here, but these are. A bunch of our soldiers got really injured, and our bullets just seemed to really not have a lot of effect on him. And the other thing too that confirms, in Native American tales, they said that these giants had a voice so loud the only thing you could describe it as, it was so frightening, it would frighten entire tribes. The voice of these creatures was so loud and so piercing, and be like a freight train, right next to a freight train, probably.
I wonder if that's why the children of Israel were afraid of Yahweh's voice.
Yeah, they were afraid of the Anakim, with good reason. I mean, they were frightening creatures, but Yeah, I did read that account about that. That's
Do you think there's any authenticity to that?
I
I mean,
do.
you have
Well,
reason to doubt it at all?
No, I absolutely believe I spent some time over in that section of the, not there and not and far and way before that occurred. I'm older than that. But I've heard that story. I've actually watched, they're available, their interview of one of the crew chiefs, I think it was, on one of the birds. Maybe Apostle Greg knows something about it, but yeah, I absolutely believe it. I've heard Timothy Alberino talk about it. Steve Quayle had one of the disclosures on there that they had to have
Oh,
space
yeah.
blurred to talk about it. And and since then there's been two other guys who came for. One guy was from the team that came and actually killed it after their first team had gotten killed and eaten. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, wow.
All I'm gonna say is I seen Navy SEALs in the desert, so I don't know what's up with that, but yeah,
There you go.
so, but
Oh,
I've
I know
also
you know more than what you're within. Well, I'm gonna have to get up with you
right. I've
somewhere
been
else, I guess, because I think you probably know a lot more about it than you're willing to.
look at
Yeah.
that. They say that he had 6 fingers. That
Yeah.
checks out with what Native Americans say.
Mhm. And
And
2 rows
rows of
too.
teeth. Look at that.
Yeah.
2 rows of teeth.
But I will say that it is written is the days of Noah, so will it be. So I mean, I don't think it's nothing for us to see that. I think we'll see that more and more as we see the more and more wicked things happen. I think we'll see more and more of the Nephilim coming about, just like then. And then going back to Lilith, Lilith is also translated as the owl or the great owl, right? So are they really doing these things? The Bohemian Grove, is that really a still worship or still doing that of Lilith, or is that just another decoy or just throwing some things in there?
I think the Satanism and witchcraft, they venerate Lilith.
I think it's been going back way from all the way to the beginning. All of it. It's all related. And they know, the Illuminati and the Bohemian Grove and all of these. They have so much knowledge about all of this kind of stuff and they use it. So I
Don't
would
forget
totally
in the,
agree.
I'm sorry, sister. Don't forget in the book, is it in Jasher or Jubilees where they talk about who was it? Somebody found carved on the rocks, engraved on the rocks, the writing of the Watchers before the flood. And they took that knowledge and they hid it. They didn't tell Noah. I think it must have been someone from Ham or maybe Ham's line. I can't remember now. Does anybody remember?
Yeah, that might have been Cush. Was Cush the one that did that?
Possibly Kush, because I know that if you believe such things, that the skins from Adam and Eve got passed down to Nimrod from Ham. I think they bypassed Cush, but I can't quite remember. But that's another one of those same type time frame tales.
Yeah, that's in Jubilees.
Jubilees, yeah. Thank you, brother.
Where is modern day Basra? Is that in Iraq? Where is Basra? Modern day Basra. Afghanistan? I forget.
Is that in Iraq or is that
I can't remember where it is, but I see it mentioned. I see it on the screen there. Basra is mentioned. It means sheep pen.
okay? All right. Wow, we had a pretty good discussion. Looks like Steve put this thing here. Oh, in the Jordan. It's in the Jordan. Okay. Basra's in the Jordan.
which is where Pella is.
Interesting.
And also, Jordan is where Yehoshua was when he was baptized in the Jordan River. It was on the Jordan side, modern day Jordan side.
All right, guys. I think we covered quite a bit.
Let me just say one more thing real quick, brother. Vicky, you should host a room, sister. You have a lot of stuff to say and you have a ton of knowledge to share. I mean, just our private conversations we have, like, blow me away some of the stuff you say. And I'm not even kidding. And I don't ever want to just like, when I have my room, I don't want to put you on the spot. So, you know what I mean?
Like you're doing right now, you mean?
Well, kind of, but less intrusive this way, because, you know, it's not my room.
Oh, okay. So
Are you more comfortable
in
just
other words,
chiming
he's
in?
not
Is that
putting
it?
He's not going to put this out all over the airwaves, right? No. I'll leave that to those who are much more well-versed and articulate than myself.
Well, you like to chime in, and we appreciate that because there are a lot
I'm
of
so
things that you
sorry. Sometimes
bring
I
up.
think I just talk too much, but my
No,
mind is
no.
going.
If
It's
you
always
didn't, nobody would. If you didn't chime in, nobody would hardly.
There's so
You're
much.
like,
I'm
there-
glad
there-
you do.
I've got so much up in there and things
You
remind
do.
me of things I've wondered about and thought about. Like I really, really seriously do want to know about that book of Yahweh, because that is something that I have wondered if that is a different text. And I mean, I've wondered about that for 10 years or better.
Is it one of the books that Daniel says are going to be sealed up until the end?
I don't know. I have looked and looked over the years and I've been unable to find anything about it. And at first I thought maybe it was a text that was in the Dead Sea Scrolls that maybe had a different name or
what did
so I-
Jackson say? Have you asked Jackson?
I've never asked Jackson, no.
Yeah, he would be familiar with it if anybody, I would think that I know of anyway. I've never heard of it. I'm with you though. I love it. You know, I have a feeling there's probably a lot of texts that we don't know about that I'm really praying that Yahweh will actually unveil like he did with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And can you imagine, man, finding like more writings from that they could date like back to like Jeremiah or just anybody really, even first, but it'd be actually better if we could get more writings of the 12 apostles and also Yeshua's writings that were destroyed would be nice. What a
Right.
treasure to find that would
I
be.
would love to
Imagine.
see the ones that got destroyed in the Alexandrian library.
Me too.
I
Yeah.
mean, my goodness.
Melissa, you got your
Yeah.
hand up.
Yeah, I'd love to read that letter to the Laodiceans.
And to the Corinthians. There's a letter, First Corinthians, he mentions a letter that they had written to him or that he had already written to them.
I've read Third
Wow.
Corinthians.
Have you?
Really?
Yeah.
I want
It's
to
good.
read it.
Yeah, I have
really-
too.
I didn't even know it.
It's on the
Nice.
Early Christian Writings website. Go on the Early Christian Writings and look for it there. It's not, I mean, I think it's legit. It doesn't say anything crazy that First and Second doesn't say. I don't think. There's probably a ton of writing. They probably all of them wrote so much. You know, James and Peter and John, you figure they had all those years. They must have wrote stuff down or had scribes write it down for them. And I know there was a lot destroyed, but I mean, just think about it. If it was us and our Yahad say, and we were just people just like we are with our minds that we have now, if we were going to be overran and taken over, we would hide our stuff, man. We would definitely hide it. And if we moved from there to Pella, out of Jerusalem went to Pella and hid in the caves of Pella, to this day, I was just researching this. To this day, they haven't excavated those caves of Pella. There could be who knows what could be in there? I mean, there might be hordes of stuff just waiting to be found in there. You know, that would be fantastic, but it's in Jordan, so they're sketchy. They won't allow excavations up there, but
3rd Corinthians is in this Bible right here, the Universal Bible. It includes all the canons of all the world Bibles. And it includes everything. I mean, I'm not sure it includes Jubilees, but it's got Enoch, because the Ethiopian canon includes Enoch. So if you want to read
And-
3rd Corinthians, get this book.
Okay, I will get that book. I agree with Brother Sean, because I mean, Paul was in jail for a long time. But what else are you going to do when you're in the clinker except write letters? So there had to be a bunch of stuff that he wrote while he was in prison, and who knows where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And one day we will all know. One day we will know.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get this on pretty much anywhere. The Universal Bible.
Amazon carries it. That's where I got my copy. You can get the paperback copy. It's cheaper than the hardback. But yeah, basically, all that 3rd Corinthians is, if I remember correctly, one of those. Let's see, that might be. No, I'm thinking of the extra chapter in Acts. There's an extra chapter in Acts too. It talks about Paul's travels to Britain. And there's other epistles that other churches have in their canons. That's another thing pastors don't like to tell you.
Well, let me ask you a question, Professor. Because you mentioned that you had done, preached on or taught about Sennacherib, and so that made me wonder. Have you ever considered that ancient Assyria, is really Germanic?
That's interesting. I never heard of that, but I don't know. What is there a book that
There is a book that I have. It's in storage. I've had it for years, and it's called, I believe the title of it is, I can't remember what the title is. The German tribes, or
is that a Stephen
no,
M? Is that a Stephen M. Collins book?
I do not believe that he wrote it. I don't think he is the author of it.
Okay.
But I believe it's something that's self-published. I think you can probably find it. I got mine probably 10 years ago on Lulu. And I think it's called The Great German Empire, or the Assyrian Empire. I can find it because I can see the cover of it in my mind. But I read that book, and it really, because it's just it's just natural to take the word Assyria and the place Assyria and just translate it into modern day Syria.
Mm-hmm.
This guy contends that ancient Assyria, that in the prophecies, that the Assyria that is spoken of, like in the things that are going to happen from Assyria, it's actually going to be German.
Interesting.
The fourth and richest Reich. So I just wondered, since you knew, had, knowledge about that, if you'd ever heard that or considered.
I have heard of the theory in passing, and I'm wondering if it's in one of these books here. Let me show you. Let me see here. Yeah, these books here. These are, if these books here are worth every penny. Let me see if I can get this up here for you guys. I don't want that one. Need this one here. All right, there we go. This book here. Get every single one of these books if you can get them. And I tell you what, they're worth every penny.
Hold on, let me take a screenshot of it. Oh, I have. Oh, okay. I have. Israel's Lost Empires. I think I have the Origins and Empires of Ancient Israel. And then I also have a book by Yair
Yeah,
Davidi.
Yar Davidi, yeah.
Yeah, I think the one I have is just called, well, actually, I think I might have two. One of them's called The Tribes, and another one is called Joseph.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm on his email list. Yeah, he sends out neat stuff all the time.
Yeah, I used to watch his videos years ago.
Mhm.
I'll see if I can find that book that I'm talking about. And because I've never heard, if you mention it to anyone, they're like, no, that's not true. And that's never an acceptable answer to me. If
Yeah,
someone
well,
says it
I've
off the
heard it in passing. I have heard the theory before. I just can't remember what book it was. I want to say that maybe in one of these books it talks about that, but I can't remember.
well, I will find that book because and I'll be able to recognize. I took a screenshot of this. Oh, look, you found a letter to the Leo. Oh, is that on Jackson's website? Oh, his is Apostolia.
Dude's brother Steve is he's like a machine, man. He's like an information machine. You just say one and he just bang, bang, bang. That's
I
awesome.
know. He is the
Yeah.
link. He is the
He
link
is. He's the
king.
man. He is.
I've got like a Steve's link folder. The last one is it? Which one are you saying?